Hello, welcome back to Make It Stick. I'm gonna jump into Anki. What do we got? 3. Here we go. What are the 6 sections of Chapter 6 Get Beyond Learning Styles? Get Beyond Learning Styles. Man, what would this be about? Get Beyond Learning Styles. I could potentially use a mnemonic for this kind of stuff. Oh my gosh, what was this chapter about? It was about the myth of the traditional learning styles. It was about learning differences that actually matter. What were the learning differences that matter? I don't know if that would have been in this section. Intelligence, reading abilities, and language fluency. What we believe about ourselves. Man, dude, I got no clue. Active learning from the get-go. Okay. Successful intelligence, dynamic testing, structure building, rule versus example learning, the takeaway. All right, it all comes back, but that was bad. What is chapter 3? Mix up your practice about in one sentence. Essentially, spaced, interleaved, and varied practice leads to more difficult, cognitively effortful learning, but it leads to longer lasting learning as well as other benefits compared to massed practice, easy, fluent mass practice. Spacing, interleaving, and variation feel harder but produce stronger, longer lasting learning than easy, fluent mass practice. Wow, okay, that was pretty good. What is the main idea of chapter 5? Avoid illusions of knowing in one sentence. Avoid illusions of knowing, right? We're going to be all susceptible to illusions of knowing. And then tools and habits for calibrating your judgment. We're all susceptible to illusions of knowing, and yeah, there was like 7 tools and habits for calibrating your judgment. Oh, wow. Objectively accurate understanding of one's strengths and weaknesses, what he does and doesn't know, is critical for continuous learning and improvement. But this understanding is easily led astray from cognitive biases, illusions, memory distortions, and faulty narratives, as well as common study techniques. All right, I would say not good. What are the 6 sections of Chapter 6 Get Beyond Learning Styles? Is this not a little bit of mass practice here? Or we're just going to end it there. We'll do this one tomorrow. What did we do yesterday? We finished Chapter 7, which was... which was what? Increase your abilities. Essentially, summing up that chapter, we could say that effortful learning physically changes the brain, increases our abilities and intelligence, capabilities, and potential. Right, that was really the big idea. And then mnemonic devices as well. So that was the takeaway section, what that section was about, as well as the author's basically saying with a little bit of grit, persistence, and discipline, if you want to become an expert in something, you probably can. So that's really the takeaway of chapter 7. We finished memory cues, mnemonics, right? The value of mnemonics really is in after you've learned and mastered material, helping you organize that material so it's readily retrievable. Eventually, its value is not in using mnemonics as a learning technique or a mastery technique itself to learn something or to master something. It's about organizing things you've already learned. Eventually, though, with enough retrieval practice and deliberate practice and effortful practice, things become automatic and intuitive and chunked, and so you don't even need mnemonics at some point. They're kind of just like a specific use case for certain things. Organizing lots of information when it's still like not super automatic. So, I don't like them that much, but they can help. What do we got? Anything else? Memory span. This is kind of how many digits you can hold in mind and repeat after hearing them. The average is 7. That's why phone numbers are 7. The world record's like 370 with mnemonics. That's why mnemonic can be very powerful for certain things. All right. That's chapter 7 in the books. Summarized by essentially what I said earlier: mindset and characteristics to increase intelligence and abilities plus mnemonic devices. Pretty succinct. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and answer these questions that I wrote down throughout the question. What are Nesbit's environmental multipliers? Interesting. That seems like so long ago now. Oh, got like an ingrown hair or something. It hurts. What are Nesbit's environmental multipliers? Small genetic differences. Small genetic differences led to big differences in intelligence because of specific environment. The environment is a multiplier. Specific environments that leads. It should be specific. Specific environments that amplify small genetic differences here we go. Specific environments that amplify differences in intelligence stemming from otherwise small genetic differences. That's pretty good. Is IQ an attempt to measure fluid intelligence or fluid and crystallized intelligence? Both. But it's really G, which is a combination of fluid and intelligence, and maybe others as well, but probably not. Modern IQ tests are an attempt to measure general intelligence, G, which includes both fluid and general intelligence. So there is very little empirical evidence for increasing fluid intelligence in adulthood. Yes. Who were the 9 muses in Greek mythology? This one I'll have to look up because I just thought it was interesting, because memory is one of the muses, I believe, or the goddess of memory. I just thought it would be interesting. I think it's a little bit off the beaten track, but who were the 9 muses in Greek mythology? Who inspired and presided over the arts, sciences, and literature? They were daughters of Zeus, king of the gods, and Mnemosyne, goddess of memory. Oh. I guess memory, so the goddess of memory was the mother of the muses. Was the mother of the muses. Interesting. I think there's something in here about like something, the first quote in the book. Memory is the mother of all wisdom. All right. I mean, that's probably somewhat inspired by this. All right. What are the 9? Okay. 1, epic poetry. Not going to actually look at the name or care about the names. I just care about what the things were. Histories, 2. Lyric and love poetry. Music. Tragedy. Man, they really liked storytelling. Sacred hymns and divine poetry. Sacred hymns and divine poetry. 7. Dance and choral school. Choral song. 8. Comedy and pastoral poetry. Comedy. They love poetry. Pastoral poetry. Modern goddesses of American would be horror movies, action movies, comedy movies, astronomy, hip hop music, goddess of hip hop music. Okay. All right. Astronomy was the only science there. All right. Okay. Oh, what have we got in the back here? Oh, other books mentioned and make it stick. How Children Succeed by Paul Tough and Intelligence How to Get It by Richard Nisbett. That's it. I'm going to go No, I'll keep it for now. All right. Now we're going to jump into ChatGPT. See if I can find chapter 6. Yep. I'm going to just copy the prompt into the learning system. Here we go. Hello, I just completed reading chapter 7 of Make It Stick. Increase your abilities. Let's do an exam over the chapter to test my knowledge, reinforce learning, and discover any weaknesses. Pretty solid prompt. Excellent initiative. Testing right after reading is one of the best ways to lock it in. Chapter 7 of Make It Stick. Increase your abilities. Focus on growing intelligence and ability through effort. Discussing the role of mindset, motivation, and metacognition. All right, one question at a time. Let's focus on your recall and precision. Question 1, in your own words, what is the main argument of chapter 7? The main argument of chapter 7 of the chapter, let's just say chapter 7 is that learning physically changes the brain and we can increase our intelligence and abilities through a combination of effortful learning, supercharged with a growth mindset and characteristics such as persistence, grit, and discipline. Parenthesis, the chapter also talks about how to about mnemonic devices and their use cases. All right. Strong start. Let's break down your answer. What you did well. You hit the core message. Intelligence and abilities are malleable, not fixed. You mentioned the growth mindset and traits like grit and discipline which are tightly tied to performance and long-term development. Bonus point for catching the side note of mnemonics. That's a smaller section, but it's there. Minor clarification. The chapter emphasizes that effortful learning, especially that which engages. Did I not say effortful learning? I said effortful learning. Especially that which engages metacognition and deliberate challenge, actually strengthens neural pathways. So yes, learning physically changes the brain. Well stated. Why is that a minor clarification? I didn't say strengthens neural pathways. There's other ways that the brain changes too. However, be careful not to overstate the mnemonic section. It's mentioned, but not a core focus of the chapter. That said, your awareness is good. Hold up, buddy. The largest section of the chapter, memory cues, was all about mnemonics. So hold your horses, bud. You're absolutely right to push back, and you're correct. Yeah, right, you even know that. Let's recalibrate. The memory cues section is a major part of Chapter 7, and it does cover mnemonic devices, the power of association, and cues and long-term retention. All about mnemonics. Why these techniques work, leveraging elaboration and retrieval structures, kind of. I downplayed it too much, appreciate your correction. Consider this a tier 2 observation on your part. That shows high resolution reading. Now, back to the challenge. Let's keep moving through the exam. I don't want to keep doing compressions for every question. Sometimes you gotta fucking rein this guy in, or he'll make you do 5 compressions on 1 question. Copy that. I'll save compression drills for Keith synthesis moments only. Question 2. What does Make It Stick say about the relationship between ability and effort? Try to answer without looking back at the book. Make It Stick says that ability is much less about natural talents and much more about quantity and quality of practice / effort. Solid. That captures the core. What you got right. You correctly stated that ability does not equal talent. The book is clear. Natural talent is overrated. You highlight the importance of practice and effort, especially quality. That's key. Not all effort leads to growth, but it must be effortful, deliberate, and corrective. Slightly deeper point. The book emphasizes that believing effort grows ability is itself a metacognitive advantage. It fuels persistence, deeper engagement, and ultimately better outcomes. Right. That's mindset. That's the growth mindset. Next up. Question 3. What is a growth mindset and how does it contrast with a fixed mindset? Try to define both and give a concrete example of each. Okay, a growth mindset is basically stems from one's abilities, one's belief about abilities / intelligence. He believes that through effort, strategy, and guidance, he can increase his abilities / intelligence. A fixed example of this would be, what is a concrete example? Like a person? Would be a guy who believes that effort, who, I don't know what they want a concrete example of. A fixed mindset stems from the belief that abilities / / intelligence is genetic and fixed, can't really be changed. An example would be, could be seen in how students respond to failure. The kid with a growth mindset will learn from the failure and try again. The kid with a fixed mindset will try to hide and ignore the failure, and it will probably lead him to quit or lead him to give up or try less. Excellent response. One of your strongest yet. Thank you, ChatGPT. What you nailed. Core definitions are accurate and clearly distinguished. You connected mindset to behavioral outcomes, especially as students respond to failure, which is exactly the kind of application Mega 6 emphasizes. Your example is spot on and mirrors Dweck's research, which the chapter draws on. Micro upgrade. If you wanted to dial this up to a tier 3 level clarity, you could add that a growth mindset isn't just about effort, it also involves strategic reflection and seeking feedback to improve. Bro, it's almost like I literally fucking said that. Why? Through effort, strategy, and guidance. Oh, it also involves strategic reflection and seeking feedback. Dog, you are a dumbass, ChatGPT, I swear, bro. Alright, accidentally had a timer set for today. I forgot that it was ChatGPT test day. Question 4. What role does motivation play in increasing one's abilities according to the chapter? Motivation? Try to go beyond it helps. What kind of motivation matters? How does it connect to learning outcomes? I don't think we've already covered that much in motivation, but I can read between the lines and say motivation, especially motivation can leads to more effort, which leads to more increases in abilities, which often leads to further development of abilities. However, the type of motivation matters. If motivation comes from one's desire to improve and learn and grow, then the motivation will lead to the most growth and increase in abilities and long-term persistence. If the motivation is largely if it comes from desire to improve, also if the motivation comes externally through praise of one's efforts, a similar outcome is likely to result. These are both motivations associated with a growth mindset. If the motivation is largely external, largely about proving or showing, then the motivation will lead to much less growth and increase in abilities, and likely be short-lived. Similarly, if the motivation comes externally from praise of one's abilities, intelligence, or talent, it will lead to a similar outcome. These are motivations tied to showing. These motivations are tied to a fixed mindset, or associated with a fixed mindset. There was something else that came to mind as well. Growth mindset, fixed mindset, growth mindset, growing, thinking externally, motivating, externally, motivation. There was something else there. If the motivation is largely about proving or showing, then the motivation will lead to much less growth and increase in abilities and likely be short-lived. Similarly, motivation comes from external praise of one's abilities, intelligence, or talent. Whatever, we'll go for it. There was something else that came to mind. That's a tier 2+ answer, clear, structured, and deeply aligned with a chapter. Strengths in your response. You correctly distinguish between intrinsic motivation to learn / improve, extrinsic motivation focus on effort, extrinsic motivation on ability / performance. You tied each to growth versus fixed mindset. Excellent connection. You identified long-term persistence as a key outcome of the right type of motivation. The book strongly supports that. Optional refinement. The chapter also implies that motivation and mindset reinforce each other. People who believe they can improve are motivated to embrace difficulty, which accelerates ability gains. That bi-directional loop is important. Belief drives action, and action reinforces belief. Okay. Whew. We'll call that good for today. We'll be back to finish up potentially finish up the ChatGPT quiz tomorrow. So that's it for today. I will talk to you tomorrow. See ya.